Hey everyone, this is Mark Wahlbeck, and in this exciting video, I'm going to teach you how to build a very simple game in Unreal Engine. And the point of this video is to get you up and running fast with the basic features of the Unreal Engine and Blueprint. So the very first thing you need to do before you can do this tutorial is download the Unreal Engine, and you can do that at unrealengine.com. And after you download and install it on either Mac or Windows, come back and let's get started. So with Unreal Engine open, I'm going to go to New Project. And then what I'm going to do is click First Person. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new basic project. So go ahead and give your project a name. We're going to call this Evil Cube. And we're going to create the project. So by default, you'll see a scene here with some things going on. You can play with that later. Right now, we're just going to dive in and build something new from scratch. So what I'm going to do is go to File, New Level. That's how you create new levels in Unreal. And we're going to click Empty. I'm going to click Command S or Control S to save. And I'm going to save this map here, or this level. We're going to call this Evil Cube Map. You can call yours whatever you want. Now this is literally an empty level, so we have to build our environment. So we're going to go to Geometry. We're going to grab a cube and place it here in the scene, in the viewport. Now what I'm going to do is press R to get this into scale mode, and I'm going to scale it down to make sort of a floor. And if you are having issues with your scaling and you want it smaller or bigger, you can go up here and click the scaling options and change it to a smaller or bigger size as you're scaling. And what we're going to do is on the right hand side, we're going to give it a larger size. So in the X and the Y, we're going to say 2000 by 2000. And for the height, we're going to say 50. And now we've got this nice little box here. One problem we have, though, is there's no lights in our scene. If I switch this from unlit to lit, you're going to notice it's very dark in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to lights on the left-hand side over here, and we're going to drag in a directional light. And I'm going to turn down the intensity of this on the right-hand side over here slightly, like so. You can put yours at whatever you like. That looks great. Now what I'm also going to do is grab a skylight and drag that in here as well too. That's going to give us some nice extra ambient light here. And on the right-hand side where it says Source Type under Light, I'm going to change this to Cube Map. I'm going to click from None, and we're going to select Epic Courtyard Daylight. And that's just going to add a little bit extra daylight to our scene here. And now, if I go over here in the middle of the floor and click play, you're going to see that my character has been dropped in the middle and there's a gun and I can shoot. Pretty cool, right? So, if you're brand new to the Unreal Editor, you can move around by pressing A, D, W, S, move around the screen like this, no big deal. And you can hold down your mouse button to look around, almost just like a first-person video game, okay? And so what we want to do is in our game, we want to have a character shoot evil cubes. These cubes are mad at us and they're coming right at us and they can knock us off the platform, and we want to shoot them, we want to make them explode, because every good game has an explosion or two. So how do we do that? Well, we've created the ground and we already have the gun. That's been pre-built in the template that Unreal has provided to us. And so what we need to do is create an artificial intelligence, slap it on a cube, and then make that cube come after us and then destroy it. So let's start with that now. So if you click your content folder here, you can see some of the folders that are in your project already. We're going to create a new folder at this top level here by right-clicking and going to New Folder. And we're going to type in Blueprints. And I'm going to double-click inside the folder. And in here, I'm going to right-click, and we're going to go to New Blueprint Class. And what I want to do is create an artificial intelligence, which we don't have on this list here. So I'm going to go to All Classes, and I'm going to type in AI, and you're going to see something called AI Controller. Select that, and then we're going to say Evil Cube AI. Now you can double-click your Evil Cube AI, and it's going to load up the Blueprint Editor. I'm going to maximize my screen here. And in your Blueprint Editor, you're going to see a viewport, a construction script, an event graph. And this is where we can actually start building out our artificial intelligence. So what we want to do is have an artificial intelligence that seeks out the player and follows them around, follows you, okay? So how do we do that? Well, I'm gonna go to my event graph over here, okay? And you're gonna see some events here like begin play. This is what would be called when your game starts, or rather when this object comes to life in your game, there's an event here that's gonna be called. But that's not what we want to use specifically or particularly. What we wanna do is when it comes to life, we wanna actually have it follow the player. So we will use this begin play, but we won't use the event tick. So what should happen when the game starts, or rather when this object comes to life? Well, what we want to do is we want an AI to go ahead and start moving after the player. So I'm going to right click and type in AI move to, and you're going to see an item here that says AI move to. This is a pre-built series of functions and other blueprints under the hood created by Unreal that makes working with artificial intelligence very easy. And so what we want to do is we want this artificial intelligence to come after our character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag from target actor, and I'm going to type in get player character. So it's going to find a player character in the scene. If there's not one in the scene, this is going to return null and nothing's going to happen. But we do have one in the scene. That's already provided for us, which is really nice. And it's going to grab player index 0. So it's going to grab the first item it finds. Okay? Now the next thing we need to do is we need to get the cube itself. Okay? This is the brain, more or less, and we need to have the brain say, hey, where's our pawn, our cube? Okay, our cube is going to be our pawn. A pawn is something that can be movable or controlled inside of a game. And so we need to find that pawn. And so we can do something similar with the pawn. We can drag it over here, say get controlled pawn. And that's going to go ahead and find a pawn that's attached to this artificial intelligence object. Now we haven't actually attached the pawn or the cube to this AI yet. Right now we're just setting up the brain. So this is cool, but if I do begin playing and plug it into this, it's going to be called once and then it's going to stop working. So if the player's running around, it's going to grab the player's location right here, the character, and it's going to start moving to that location, but once it gets there, it's going to stop. It's going to stop following the player. So we need a way to keep letting this artificial intelligence know to keep looking. And that's why we're going to create a timer. We're going to right click here and we're going to type in set timer by function name. And we're going to type in a function name, whatever we want, and ours particularly is going to be called follow player, like so. And we want it to be called every 1 second, so we want it to repeat a lot, and then yes, we want to loop it. And then what I'll do is I'll right click here and say add custom event. And we're going to call it the exact same name that we just typed in. Follow player. Wonderful. And so now what I'm going to do is when this object comes to life, when begin play is called, and Unreal Engine is going to call this for us, we can drag this node over to the set timer to start this timer. And then what we can do now with our custom event of follow player is we can put that over here in the AI move to. So when the game starts, what's going to happen is it's going to call this function every 1 second. And then this function will start the AI move to. So every 1 second, it's going to try and find the new location of the player and come after him. So this is looking really good. And what I'm going to do is click compile. And you should see a green check mark on here. And then I'm going to click save. So now we have the brain. The brain is up and running, but we don't actually have the cube yet. So that's the next thing to create. So we're going to right click here in our blueprints folder, and we're going to go to blueprint class. And in this case, what we want to use is a pawn. And we're going to call this evil cube pawn. And remember, a pawn is something that can be controlled or moved around inside of a level. You can do similar things with an actor, but a pawn is specifically something that is controllable or controlled, and it works great with artificial intelligence. So with our evil cube pawn selected, we're going to double click that. And what we want to do is actually have a mesh. We want to show something on the screen. And a blueprint, like we just created, a blueprint is like a series of components and meshes and things that make up something useful. So in our case, we want a cube that can do things and can be controlled by things, and then we can drag it into our game or dynamically load it. And so what we want to do is have a cube show up on here, visible to the player. So we're going to click Add Component, and we're going to go down to Cube. Now this cube is pretty huge, so I'm going to click my cube here and press R. And then in the middle, making sure all three gizmos are selected, I'm just going to click and drag to make it smaller. And over here on the right-hand side, you can see it's 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. Now, if you want to change your color, you can double-click this material here to open the material editor. You can click color, and then you can click the color down here to change your color to something different if you would like something different. In our case, we're going to change it to pink. I'm going to click Apply and close out of the material editor. And now we have our cube here, but it's not really doing anything yet. It's just a basic cube. So one thing I know that we're going to need is we're going to need something that's going to make this cube movable. It can't move. The artificial intelligence can't move it itself. It has to have like an engine, something that moves it. So we can add a component onto our cube to move it. Floating pawn movement. We're going to click that. And now our cube has the ability to move. If I click floating pawn movement, which is a component, you're going to see some different things available for you to change, such as max speed, acceleration, etc. So here we have our lonely little cube, our evil cube, sitting here inside of this viewport here. Now we can click compile and save. This is looking good. Now the next thing we need to do, click our evil cube pawn up here at the top. And then where it says AI controller class under the pawn section, we want to change this to our new AI controller because we want this pawn to be controlled by an artificial intelligence. And ours was called Evil Cube AI. Dun dun dun. So here's our Evil Cube AI. I'm going to click compile and click save and close out of the blueprint editor. Now, what I want to do is just see if anything is working at all. And it's not going to work, and I'll tell you why, but we can drag this cube over here, like so. I'm going to press W to move it into move mode, and I'm going to click play. So we've got a cube here. It's not doing anything interesting, but you can tell that the physics is working on it, at least the collider is, not gravity. So nothing's happening, right? So how do we get our cube to move? Well, we have not specified a navigation mesh or volume. Rather, what we're trying to do is say, hey, where can this cube move to? The AI doesn't know. So we can go over here on the left-hand side to volumes, and we can go find nav mesh bounds. And what I want to do with this is press R to go into scale mode, and I would like to scale this to the size of our little arena here, like so. And I'm just going to move around, kind of see, press W here to move it into the place where I think it looks good, and maybe we'll make it just a tiny bit bigger here. So this is basically setting our arena boundaries for our navigation. Okay, this AI needs to know where it can move to. And if we go to show navigation, what we want to have happen is we want anywhere where this block is to be green. If it's not green, it's not going to work. The green is telling us where the cube can move around to. So this looks pretty good here. So if I click save and play, notice how the cube came to me and it knocked me off. So already it's managed to kill me before we've even got the game logic going on. So that's pretty cool, right? We had a cube here and it's using artificial intelligence and pathfinding to find the player. Now check this out. If I move, it's going to continue to find me. See how it's still just knocking me over? So it's very smart and doing a lot of work for us. And we didn't have to write any code for that at all. But we haven't added any complexity to the game in the sense of game design or logic. We want the player to be able to shoot that cube, and if that cube gets hit, we want it to explode. Boom, and then destroy it. So what I'm going to do is click Evil Cube Pawn. I'm going to go here into the event graph, and I'm going to delete these events. And we're going to create a new event. So what I'm going to do is select my cube here and right click. And you can notice it says add event for cube, call function on cube. If I deselect the cube, those are gone. So make sure you select cube up here, right click, and we want to add an event for the cube. And we want to go to collision and add on component hit. Whenever something hits this component, we want to do something. With Blueprint and Unreal, everything is based on events. And notice how it says cube here in parentheses. Make sure that it matches that. If it doesn't, it's not referencing your cube. So what do we want to have happen when a bullet hits one of the cubes? Well, we want the cube to disappear, and we also want an explosion to happen. So how do we do that? How can we create an explosion and then cause our cube to disappear? Well, first, let's focus on getting a explosion to appear in our scene here. So what we want to do is right-click and then type in spawn actor from class. Attempt to spawn a new actor with the specified transform. And then what we want to do is click select class. And we want to select one of these effects here. And we want to do blueprint effect explosion. You could do something else if you want, but we're going to do explosion, okay? And so what we want to have happen is when we hit that cube, we want it to explode. But we also need to destroy that cube as well too, okay? We need that to disappear. And also, if you notice here on the explosion, it wants to know where, the transform. Where is this actually going to be exploding from? And so what we can do is we can grab our cube. We want the explosion to happen right in our cube. So what I do is I grab the cube at the top left here, dragged it into the blueprint graph editor here. All right, and so what I can do is I can get the transform of this cube and we can pass it in to the spawn transform here. So if I click from the cube and type in get transform, you're going to see get world transform. And I can move these over here and I can take that value and pass it in here to the explosion blueprint, the spawn actor. So it's going to spawn it exactly where the cube is. But now we have a problem. If I destroy the cube before we bring out the fire, it's not going to be able to find its location. So we're going to need to make sure we have a sequenced order of operations here. And to do that, all we need to do is holding down the S key, S like Steven, is hold down S and click. And we're going to create a sequence. These will be executed in the proper order that they are drawn to here with the blueprint. So the first item that I want to do is I want to spawn an actor. Okay, we want to spawn the blueprint for the explosion. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to destroy, okay, we want to destroy our component. So how do we destroy our component? Well, what we can do is drag another instance of our cube. We can put it right over here. And we can drag from this, and we're going to type in destroy component. Now we're not destroying the whole blueprint, the actor or the pawn. We're not destroying that, because if we do, then our explosion will stop. So we just want to destroy the cube, okay? So let's go ahead and move these down here. I'll put these up here. And what I want to do is on the second then, is we want to destroy our cube, okay? Now we are going to need to destroy our entire blueprint, because we don't want a whole bunch of things floating around in memory. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag from return value and click promote to variable. At the top right, we'll give it a name, and let's call this fire explosion, okay? And with that selected, I can go down here to on end play and click the plus button. And what this has done is it's created an event for when the explosion is done playing. Pretty cool. And now what I can do is I can actually destroy the game object, or rather the entire blueprint. I can destroy it after the explosion is done playing. So we're going to right click and we're going to type in destroy actor. And we're going to drag this over to here. Okay, and the target is self, meaning this object that the blueprint's attached to. Okay, so what we have going on here is, and let's go ahead and drag our on component hit to the sequence to get that started. Click compile, and it's green, that's great, and save it. So what's going on here is when the cube is hit, we want to throw out an explosion, boom. Okay, that looks good, that looks good, that looks good. And then when the explosion is done, we want to destroy the object altogether, the blueprint object. So I'm going to close out of this screen here. And there's our little cube. And what I'm going to do is press play. And when I shot it, it disappeared. It blew up. So it did exactly what we wanted it to do, which is pretty cool. So the next thing we need to do to finish our game is simply have these spawn on demand. We want to spawn these actors whenever we want them to, basically. So how do we do that? Well, it's actually pretty easy. What we're going to do is, first off, go to show. I deleted that cube out of the screen, by the way. We're going to go to show, and what we're going to do is we're going to turn off navigation. I don't want to look at it right now. And I'm just going to kind of create a box for a place where we want to spawn. So if I go over here to our basic tab, I can drag in a box trigger. Okay, and I'm gonna make this larger so to make sure our box actually fits in it. Move it up right about there, and I'll drag it right about there. And what I'm gonna do with this box trigger is we're gonna go into something called a level blueprint. So we've been creating class blueprints which can be instantiated anytime you want them. But a level blueprint is where you want to build things specifically for your level. This might be where you trigger cinematics and things specific to a level. And in our case, we want to set up our spawning specific to this level. So I'm going to go to blueprints. It doesn't have to be here. You could create a class off of this, but we're going to go to blueprints and open level blueprint. What I'm going to do is minimize this here slightly so I can see my trigger box over here, and I'm going to drag it into my screen over here, and I now have a reference to the trigger box. And what I want to have happen is in that trigger box, whenever the level starts, we want it to start creating cubes from this location. So pretty cool. So I'm going to maximize this now, and so what I'm going to do here is drag the trigger box over here. We'll need that in just a moment. And in the begin play, I want to start spawning our evil cubes, okay? So how do we do that? Well, it's pretty easy, actually. We're gonna right click, and we're gonna type in spawn AI from class. This is important. Make sure you select spawn AI, not spawn actor. And what we're gonna do is in the pawn class, we're gonna select our evil cube pawn, right there, evil cube pawn. And that's gonna find its parent AI class that we've attached to it. All right, and now it needs a location. Where do we actually want these boxes to spawn from? Well, we can put that in our trigger box. So what I'm going to do is drag from the trigger box, and we're going to type in get location, and it's going to say get actor location. And what I can do now is drag this value into location. So we want to spawn it from the trigger box, but we want to keep spawning it and spawning it and spawning it. So what do we need? If you said a timer, that's exactly right. We'll go ahead and use a timer. So we'll create another custom event because we know we're going to need it. And we'll call this spawn evil cube, like so. And then let's go ahead and right click, and we're going to say set timer by function name. And we'll go ahead and drag event begin play over to the timer. And in the function name, what we'll do is we'll say spawn evil cube, like so. And how often do we want it to spawn? Let's say 0.5 seconds, every half second. And we're going to say looping. So this is going to call our spawn evil cube function over and over again, every half second. And now we're going to drag this over to spawn AI from class, which is going to go ahead and spawn this actor, our evil cube, onto the actual map. So I'm going to click compile and save. And then let's go ahead and play the game and see what happens. And it is definitely working. And notice how they keep attacking me relentlessly. Pretty cool. And I just got knocked off the edge almost. So that's really cool. So we finished our game here, and I just want to show you one more thing. If you're wondering how can I increase the speed of my object, that's pretty easy. You can double click your evil cube pawn, and then you can go into your floating pawn movement, and you can change the max speed. So if we wanted to make this really hard, we could set the speed to, let's say, 3,000. Click compile and save. I'm guessing this is going to be very difficult, but let's go ahead and play. Oh, and let's finish up one other thing as well too, just to make our life a little bit easier so we're not falling from the sky. let's go over here to our basic, and let's go to the player start, and just place that in your scene. It's facing the wrong way, so I'm going to press E to go into rotate mode. I just want to point it towards the cube. And now if I press play, the cubes are appearing right there. Woo, nice and fast. These are some evil cubes. So anyway, this is the game. Congratulations, we've covered a lot. There's a lot to go into, and this is using blueprints. And maybe you're wondering, well, I want to learn Unreal Engine using C++, not blueprints. Well, I just want to let you know that even Unreal, in their official documentations and presentations, say that you will use Blueprint and C++ in all of your projects. So this is very, very important for you to know. And these are some of the basics of Unreal Engine and Blueprint. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.